It's shocking how much sugar goes into jam.
It is shocking. I feel like I've been shocked by it before. Like, oh, okay.
People try to make it with no sugar or less sugar, and it never... you can buy special kind of pectin or use different types of pectin to get it set without the sugar, but it tastes terrible, and I don't know what to tell people. I get being a crunchy mom, but you gotta have sugar sometimes. It's chemistry. It's not just about flavor.
It's that time of year when many Oregonians are enjoying an abundance of garden produce. I have a pile of peppers in my fridge right now, and I'm still figuring out what to do with them. Fortunately, I know exactly who to ask about this.
I'm Heather Arndt Anderson. I work at OPB writing the Super Abundant newsletter every week with a recipe, and I get to work on the video series sometimes. And I have written a couple books about culinary history. I've done a lot of research on domestic science. People call me when they have questions about things food related or food history related. I like to just chime in and be a little know-it-all about stuff.
I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. And speaking of home, I visited Heather in her kitchen on a recent fall afternoon. We did eventually talk about my peppers, but first we focused on jam. She had pulled some blackberries out of the freezer and thawed them out in a large copper pot.
And so the first thing I'm going to do is just cook the fruit down to kind of break down the structure a little bit. I want to get it, not quite to jammy consistency, but broken down. And then I can begin scooping it into my food mill to get some of the seeds out.
The food mill is a contraption that fits over a bowl or pot. It has a metal piece that fits into the bottom with small holes in it and another metal part attached to a crank on top. Heather scooped the blackberry mixture into the food mill, and as she turned the crank, the dark purple juice got pushed through to the bottom, and the seeds and a bit of pulp stayed in the food mill.
After I mill the seeds out, and I do like to get as much pulp as I can into the jars because that part's nice, the seeds are not. Then I will return it all back to the jam pot, and I will add the sugar and get it to kind of a rip and boil. And the phrase that is always used in the instructions in any book or old-fashioned jam guide will say to bring it to a boil that can't be stirred down.
After stirring in a lot of sugar, it was time to add the pectin.
It's a thickener, so it gelatinizes in liquids. It needs a little bit of acidity, which fruit usually provides, but you can sometimes add citric acid or lemon juice. And when it gelatinizes, it's absorbing the liquid in your puree and making it a semi-solid.
We continued chatting as Heather washed and prepped several jars for the next step in the jam making process.
Jam making is messy work, but it's so satisfying to see a row of jars of stuff that you grew and processed yourself. One time I was doing a big batch of jam like this, and it takes a while to kind of cook down. You feel you've got maybe an hour, and I was like doing other stuff in the other room, and all of a sudden I smelled this very rich, like almost acrid kind of smell. And I realized that the bottom of the jam had scorched, just the bottom though, but it was definitely noticeable. And so that was the year that I developed a recipe for blackberry barbecue sauce. I've got to use this slightly smoky jam, and now it is one of the most searched recipes on the Oregon Blackberry and Raspberry Commission website. It's my blackberry barbecue sauce recipe.
You heard it here first. When life gives you burnt jam, make delicious barbecue sauce. This particular batch of jam did not get burned at all. So Heather carefully ladled the hot liquid into 10 jars, screwed metal lids onto them, Then she used a special kind of tongs to lift each of the jars and place them in a big pot of boiling water. As the jars boiled on the stove, we chatted about what to do with my peppers. We are growing Jimmy Nardellos, shishitos, jalapenos, Hungarian black peppers, and serranos, and Scotch bonnets.
Wow. The Jimmy Nardellos are a sweet pepper to just roast and eat. You can put them on a pizza. You can just have them as like a side dish. A shishito is also really great for grilling. Rip and hot pan, a little bit of oil and salt. That's it. And the joy of the shishito is, of course, like 1 out of every 10 will just surprisingly be spicy.
I got a spicy shishito recently. I was so excited. It feels like winning the lottery.
It feels like good luck. It's like when a ladybug lands on you. Yes. Serranos, jalapenos, I would use those for like a salsa verde. I would probably still roast just because I love the flavor of roasted chilies so much. Roast or cook them over a grill to get some smokiness. And then, you can use those with tomatillos to make a just salsa verde, or you can just puree that and make just a straight green salsa. The Scotch bonnets, I would probably use those to make some kind of like jerk sauce. And then you have the Hungarian black pepper, which I've never seen before.
They're a beautiful color. They grow like a very deep blackish purple, and some of ours are starting to turn reddish too. And I've learned that they have a similar spice level to jalapenos, I guess. So we've been kind of just trying to throw them into foods.
You could do a stuffed pepper, and if you don't use ground meat, you can use a bulgur, like a seasoned bulgur wheat, or you could use TVP, and make like everything that you love about a stuffed pepper, but just as a pilaf instead.
Thank you. That all sounds amazing. So, not a situation this year, but in past years, I have definitely been in the position of being completely overwhelmed by sun gold tomatoes specifically.
Oh, yeah.
I will say there was one year we even tried to downsize. We were just going to do one plant. But that one plant was such a beast that we named it King Tomato. It was held up by 5 different tomato cages. And so, honestly, we have had to take a slight break from tomatoes, but I think probably a lot of our listeners can relate to drowning in tomatoes. What should one do when one is drowning in tomatoes?
I had 2 different people reach out to me with this problem just in the last week. And I think that when I have a glut of sun golds especially, you can make a nice tomato jam with them. You could confit them, like roast them until they're really soft and kind of squishy and a little bit sticky, and then just put them in a jar and cover it with olive oil so that they, but keep that in the fridge because you can't really can that. But yeah, the tomato confit is great because then you can just spread these like roasty, sticky tomatoes on bread all year round. Or you can just spoon them out and stir them into like cooked pasta. You can dry them in your oven if you don't have predictable sunny weather for sun drying. I like to pull the skins and seeds out, using the same food mill, but don't chuck those. You can dehydrate them till they're completely dry and then powder them and then save the tomato powder. And whenever you need like a couple tablespoons of tomato paste for a recipe, like for a stew or something, you just use the powder instead and mix it with a little bit of water and it reconstitutes. You get that really rich, deep umami, like tomato flavor. It's really nice.
Okay, this is inspiring. Maybe next season we will re-enter the tomato game with all of these wonderful ideas. So we're here in fall. It's a lovely fall day. What else do you like to make this time of year?
I have a fig tree that's just starting to really put out its second crop of fruit for the year. And so I'm going to be just dehydrating most of those. My persimmon tree is also going to be ripening soon, and I will be giving a lot of those away probably. Any kind of fruit that I grow, you can either ferment it directly to vinegar or use it to flavor a vinegar. Actually, I have this pine cone syrup that I made. It's this it's a nice way to add a little flavor.
What does it taste like?
It tastes like slightly foresty, molassesy caramel.
Cool.
I just kind of like to make little potions and put them in jars and bottles and things. For me, like, a lot of the approach to putting food up in jars is about saving money, and it's about being economical and not wasting. But another thing that people don't always keep in mind is that when you do small batches of things like this, it just gives you access to gourmet ingredients for free, basically. Like the pine cone syrup, free. I picked some pine cones, whatever, it cost me like a cup of sugar. And so, yeah, having little jars of weird, witchy, gross things. This looks like dirt. It's black garlic salt, because one time I saw black garlic on discount at the... Oh, that smells so good.
I love
at
black
H
garlic.
Mart. Yeah, and so I just pureed it with kosher salt, and I have I can season ramen.
Oh my God.
But if you bought black garlic salt, forget about it. It'd be like $30 for a little tiny jar. Yeah, you can live richly and have bougie flavors in your life if you have time to do a few things yourself.
That is so cool. So I think you maybe touched on this a little bit before, but there are ways for canning to go wrong. And so when that happens, it can be dangerous in a number of ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the food safety part of it, which I mentioned. Botulism is no joke. People still die from botulinum poisoning. You can have jars explode in your canner if you aren't putting things in properly, or you're, reusing lids, things won't seal properly, and then you get mold in there. Seal failures are pretty common. They're not the end of the world. But when a jar explodes, it's heartbreaking, because not only did you lose a jar of your product, but then you have to deal with the broken glass, and all the contents of that jar are now swimming around in your boiling water bath, coating everything. So it really is like a triple whammy of negative.
Well, luckily you have been here to guide us through the proper process. There have been no disasters so far while I've been here as your witness.
And knocking on wood.
Yes, here, I'm going to knock on wood again. So the OSU Extension Service has a hotline people can call with their food preservation questions. And so you seem like an absolute expert, but I am wondering, have you ever called, or what types of calls have you fielded from friends or people you know?
I have never called the hotline myself, and I am not a certified master food preserver, but I do want to get the creds. But people call me with canning questions sometimes, or they text me usually. But one time my cousin called without texting first, and I was like, oh my God, somebody died. I just assumed why would she call? And she really just had a question about apple butter. She wanted to know how thick it had to be before she could start canning it. And I was like, don't ever call me again unless someone's dead.
Text your apple butter questions first, please.
Pretty soon, that big batch of blackberry jam was done processing in the canning pot, and it was time to lift the jars out with the special jar tongs.
You always want to put towels down to set your jars on. So in case something spatters over, sometimes they will kind of bubble over after you take them out. It'll catch that. But also they're really hot, and so you can get rings on your counters if you're not careful.
Not long after the jars were lined up on the towel, we started to hear the satisfying sound that lets every home canner know they've been successful.
So what happens now?
Now I let them cool completely before I check the seals. And so tomorrow I will take the rings off, and then you kind of gently flick the lid with your fingernail. You don't want to try to pry it off, but just make sure that it's staying put. And usually if all of them have popped, that means that they've sealed. And so, and all of the ones that sealed properly will get labeled and go to my basement, and whatever doesn't seal will go into the fridge.
Awesome. We got jam, people. We got jam.
Coming up after a break, food preservation isn't just a fun hobby. It's also been an essential part of Oregon's economy for more than a century in the form of canned fish. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB about the place you call home. If you dig what you hear, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll add a little zest to your Monday morning with something new and exciting to listen to each week. You can also follow me on Instagram. I'm at Jen Chavez OPB. That's Jen with 2 N's, and I will keep you posted on everything we're up to. And remember, this episode about food preservation and all the great OPB reporting and storytelling you hear on this show, including the newsletter that Heather Arndt Anderson sends out once a week, is made possible by the support of many thousands of OPB members. Support our journalism by becoming an OPB sustaining member today at opb.org/pod. And now, back to the show. When most people think about food preservation, they probably think about jam, like blackberry jam, or pickles, or canned veggies. But there's one canned food that's had a huge impact on Oregon's economy for more than 150 years. And it's probably something almost everyone listening has eaten.
And we would do a tuna noodle casserole, basically. So it would be a can of tuna, box of mac and cheese.
My friend and colleague, Crystal Ligori, looked at the role of fish canning in Oregon's history and its future.
It's a sunny morning in Astoria, Oregon, when I make my way down the wooden planks of Pier 39 to visit the Hanthorne Cannery Museum.
This is the old freezer room. We're in the inside a freezer. The walls are a foot thick. They're filled with sawdust. That was all they had at the time. It's pretty good insulation. If a plank comes loose somewhere, out spills the sawdust, you sweep it up, nail the plank back on the wall.
That's
again.
Peter Marsh, a British expat who, in the early 2000s, decided to start collecting bits and pieces of canning-adjacent artifacts, like the pair of large pressure cookers sitting to my right.
But this is authentic. I found these on the waterfront in Ilwaco, rusting, with weeds growing out of them. And I politely went into the shop and said, "Excuse me, do you really want those? Because we're starting a museum." And he said,
maritime journalist and avid sailor, Marsh started the museum kind of on a whim after stumbling on a cannery exhibit at a different museum while cycling up the California coast.
They're very professional Californians, the Hollywood kind of aspect. And I thought, wow, they spent $1 million doing an exhibit on fish canning. Well, if they can do it, I'll do it for 100.
The museum sits in a former cannery, right where the mouth of the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. Canning got its start in France, invented at the request of Napoleon, who in 1795 offered a cash prize to whoever could invent a long-term food preservation method to feed his armies. It took 15 years for someone to claim the prize, with a former candy maker creating a technique that used glass jars, corked and sealed with wax before being boiled. Canning spread across Europe and soon made its way to the U.S., with the first cannery opening in 1812 in New York. On the West Coast, Astoria was home to some of the area's first commercial canning in the 1860s. But it was salmon, not tuna, that first found its way into the shelf-stable preservation method. At that time, Astoria had the reputation of being the fishing capital of the world due to the massive amounts of salmon in the water.
There was fish wheels. Could fill this entire factory, one fish wheel. It just scooped the fish like that, dropping them into buckets.
By the 1880s, there were 39 canneries along the lower Columbia River, packing what would be the equivalent of about 23 million pounds of salmon each year. At the turn of the century, the Hanthorne Cannery was one of 7 canneries to pool their resources and form the Columbia River Packers Association, or CRPA. But the salmon boom ended up being short-lived.
When the salmon began to diminish, like in the 1920s, the runs were beginning to go down from overfishing. So with that overfishing, someone came, literally, it appears someone a boat showed up one day with this big shiny fish. Looked great. What is it? I caught a bunch of them out there. And what do they taste like? And made phone calls around 1930s. And this is called a tuna, Mr. Fisherman, and go back and get some more.
Tuna became the talk of the town, with albacore surpassing salmon as CRPA's top product by the 40s and 50s. 10 years later, the company rebranded to take on the namesake of its most popular product.
Yum, yum, bumblebee, bumblebee tuna. I love a sandwich made with bumblebee. Yum, yum.
The Bumblebee Cannery in Astoria is long gone, shuttered in 1980. Most of the tuna you find on a grocery store shelf is canned in Southeast Asia. Now, there are fewer than 10 canneries left on the Oregon coast, but they're keeping the tradition alive and well. Is now still a good time to chat?
It's as good a time as any. Let me put it to you that way. So,
How much tuna are you canning every day?
4,000 to 6,000 pounds,
A day?
somewhere a day. Yeah.
That's Heath Hampel, the owner of Chuck's Seafood in Charleston, Oregon, a coastal fishing community about 2 hours north of the California border.
It was started in '53 by a guy named Chuck McGeorge. That's where Chuck Seafoods came from, and then it went through 2 or 3 different owners, and then in 1980, my dad bought the business. He actually worked for Chuck McGeorge back when he was a kid, growing up in Charleston, and I basically grew up in the plant here.
Chuck's Seafoods has a cannery, a smokehouse, a retail storefront, and its own oyster farm. So there's always work to be done.
This is an 18-hour-a-day job if you let it be. You know, this is all perishable products, and it comes in seasons and spurts, and it keeps you pretty busy.
Because we're still in the midst of tuna season, the cannery is slammed. Not really conducive to having a reporter walking around inside. So instead, I just asked Hampel to talk us through the canning process.
The fish comes in. We have a fillet area. It's kind of the blood and guts part of the business. We try to keep it separate from the rest of it. So it comes in, it gets filleted by hand. Everything we do is by hand. There is not a machine that I know of that you can fillet a tuna, so it's all done by hand. So they get filleted, we put them in bags, ice them down, and then they get moved to a packing line where it goes through and we hand pack all this fish. And then we run it through the seamers, gets a lid put on it. We run it through a set of retorts. It gets cooked, and then it hits a label room and off to wherever parts of the country or retail store or wherever it needs to go.
And that canning process happens on equipment that's nearly 100 years old.
A Canco 006 seamer, they built them in the 30s and 40s, but it's still state-of-the-art equipment. I think we own 5 of them. So the old school part, in this cannery world, works good for what we do.
Hampel explained that when Chuck started, there were a few canneries in every port along the coast, mainly canning for sport fishermen. But that industry mostly dissolved by the 90s.
So we kind of had to reinvent what we're doing. That's how we ended up in the oyster business. We started growing oysters, but we also started doing custom processing for commercial. Like a fisherman can bring a portion of his catch in, let's say 5,000 pounds, and then turn it into cans, and then over the winter they can go out to farmers markets and wherever and go sell that stuff. But it also keeps this cannery running because I'm doing a service that nobody else was doing at the time. That's why we're still here.
And this co-packing model has been key to what's been called a tinned fish revival, fueled largely by young millennials and Gen Z looking for that bougie on a budget food option. Scrolling through TikTok, there are thousands of videos talking about tinned fish.
Friday night, tinned fish date night. Welcome back. It's been a while.
So if you're going to get into tinned fish like I have, it's been a full week of tinned fish obsession for me.
I spent way more than I should have on tinned fish.
It's a revival a handful of Oregon companies are in the midst of. One of them owned by Sarah Hammond.
To be able to take such a highly perishable item and then process it in a way that it can maintain its integrity and also sit on a shelf is, in like the science nerd way, in my brain, like the coolest thing ever.
Hamann is a chef and 2-time James Beard finalist who, in 2022, started Tiny Fish Co., a small batch Pacific Northwest tinned fish company. Her love of canned fish actually started with a love of food preservation, passed down from her grandma.
My grandma, being a Depression era lady, would have the basement just like all corners filled with jars of you name it, preserving anything and everything. So basically, if the whole world imploded, she could live comfortably in their basement for like a year.
The fish part of the equation came in later, after Hamann spent time living and working in Spain.
For probably like €4 at the time, you get a really cool can of fish and a baguette and a bottle of wine, and boom, you have dinner. And it's so easy and so delicious. And I was on a budget when I was working there, and so that for me was dinner.
In Spain and much of Europe, tinned fish is a huge part of the culinary landscape. And the philosophy behind it goes beyond just needing to feed the masses.
It's like everything they do is so that they can enjoy life later. So that instead of having to labor in the kitchen, you pop open the can because you have guests come over and you can enjoy their company and everyone's presence. It's more about how can we create a life that's really fulfilling.
Hamann wanted to capture that enjoyment. Her first idea was to open a Basque-style restaurant, small, dark, and cozy, with a menu of tinned fish.
But then, of course, the chef in me got the best of me and was like, yeah, that'd be really cool, but what if I also did my own fish? Like, what if I also made the canned fish that we sold at the place?
She spent months working on recipes, making a refrigerated version first of her preserved anchovy, while also taking classes about seafood canning and preservation. That came to a halt in early 2020 with the pandemic. But a silver lining to the work stoppage meant Hamann had a lot of time on her hands. So when the reality TV show Top Chef came knocking, she was available.
I went on Top Chef and, obviously after I had just kind of worked through doing all of these things myself and going to these weird classes, they had asked me on the show, what was my dream? And I said my dream would be to own a boutique cannery. And they aired it.
With that idea out there in the world, Hamann felt like there was no better time to finally pursue her own canned seafood company, with a twist.
I knew that I had to make my company different. You don't see Pacific Dover sole in a can, but we have tons of it on the Pacific West Coast, and it's a highly sustainable species. It's a tasty species also. It picks up a lot of flavor. It's very lean. It's high in protein. And that was my idea. I can be different by focusing on some different species and also choosing to support the local fishing economy, to really try to reinvigorate the local canning industry as much as I can, even if it's a very small footprint, to just try.
In addition to Dover sole, Tiny Fish Co. uses other seafood like rockfish, mussels, and octopus, all abundant on the West Coast and packed by a small local cannery, in the same way it's been done for 150 years.
Fish has a season, obviously. So do fruits and vegetables. But preserving the harvest can actually be a year-round activity. Crystal also visited a farm outside of McMinnville, Oregon, to talk with a chef who is all about stocking up for a rainy day.
The Oakta farm would be easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Tucked among dozens of vineyards, the former cherry orchard sits at the top of Ribbon Ridge, and it can feel like you're walking through cloud cover when you're there. In addition to the rows of garden beds, multiple greenhouses, and even a small herd of sheep, the acre-ish of land is also home to an experimental lab of sorts in the form of an on-site larder. Historically, a larder was a cool space that could store food in the days before we had refrigeration. But as larder chef Larry Nguyen explained, nowadays, a larder includes all kinds of food preservation.
Whether it's dried, whether it's held in oil, canned, whether it's pickled, cooked into a jam, all of that encompasses a larder. Overall, preserving what you grow during the growing season and allowing you to have it in the months where things are more scarce.
That scarcity is something that's well known to farmers across the country. It's often referred to as the hunger gap, the time between late November and early March when there just isn't a lot growing. The goal of the Okta Farm is to grow food for Okta Restaurant, a micro-seasonal fine dining tasting menu from the mind of 2 Michelin-starred chef Matthew Leitner. During the peak of summer, around 85% of the produce on Okta's menu comes from their very own farm. But it's Nguyen's job to figure out how to incorporate the produce year-round and make sure nothing goes to waste.
Can we find a way to utilize them through pickling and try to extend their life so that they get a second chance to be utilized? Do we want to smoke them and dry them? I have some dried chilies from 3 years ago that we've been able to get on this menu this past year. That way we're not losing them. There's so much waste built into our models in general. Having a larder built into it allows us an opportunity to make it slightly more efficient.
As I walked through the larder, I saw shelves of hand-labeled containers filled with everything from a fine dust of electric red tomato powder to glass jars that were packed with different varieties of dried peppers to sheet trays that were stacked with charred celery root that looked like giant-sized roasted marshmallows. And, of course, there are the fermentation buckets, the centerpiece both physically in the larder and of Nguyen's preservation techniques.
But here I've got a bunch of shoyus, a Japanese-style soy sauce, along with 30-ish kinds of misos.
30 misos?
Yeah. So when we were building the lab, one of the big things that I really wanted to showcase the region, in this case, the Willamette Valley. And so one of the first things I looked at was grains and beans and started to utilize our techniques for that, whether it growing koji, making misos, making shoyus.
He sourced purple barley from Lonesome Whistle Farm in Junction City to grow koji, a fungal mold that's used as the foundation for a variety of fermented foods, everything from soy sauce and miso to sake and rice vinegar. It's been dubbed Japan's national fungus, but was first used in China nearly 9,000 years ago.
Koji is something we grow quite often. It's a mold that has grown alongside humans for centuries, something that's cultivated alongside us for centuries. And essentially, we've learned to cultivate it and grow it on rice traditionally all throughout Asia. Here, I grow it on pretty much anything I get my hands on, whether it's rye, wheat. In this case here, what really stood out was purple barley, a grain that was cultivated in the valley, a grain that was cultivated for Oregon. And so something that was uniquely special to the story of this place.
Once grown, koji produces enzymes that break down carbohydrates and proteins. Depending on how it's used, the mold can bring out the sweetness in rice to make sake, or break down the protein in beans to make a savory miso.
So we've got a couple of misos for you here. This one is a navy rice miso. And that is coming from beans from Bernard's. Kind of has its own unique flavor to it without having any of the soybeans. The one next to it is going to be completely different. This is an older Sofini purple barley miso. The Sofinis are actually coming from Myers Creek, so this is a few months older. It's more of a red miso. The purple barley misos are going to be a lot more malty, deep.
I was going to say totally malty or shoyu, that's very...
significantly savorier than the rice misos are going to be.
Another example of food preservation at the Okta larder shows up in a batch of white kimchi he made with produce that otherwise would have gone to waste.
We grew some Caraflex cabbage, and we had a bit extra. We had a bunch of extra farm product in general. So, cool, I'll make a bunch of white kimchi for us. So in this case, we have habanadas, we have green garlic, we've got daikon, pretty much everything just from our farm. The daikon is actually from daikons that were imperfect, that would never make it to the restaurant. So instead of losing those, I simply wash them, cut them up, and they make it into this kimchi, and then hopefully makes a menu, and then we end up having a second chance instead of just taking it for a loss.
How much is trial and error? Because I feel like, I just think about making kimchi at home and just being like, I hope I don't poison myself.
No, you're absolutely right. I think the reason I get to have a job is I've got 10 years of trial and error. And you're absolutely right. You're going to make mistakes. It's a large part of it is understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it, which is where my experience comes into play, and knowing what the guardrails are, right? For lactofermentation, you need to add salt to create an environment that is conducive for the lactobacillus. But don't get me wrong, like the first year here, it's like, oh, this salty bean water is going to be a shoyu. Just give me 9 months.
Food preservation takes time, but it's certainly worth the wait.
So this is a little bit of that white kimchi.
I'm like, I want to take that home. That's so good. Wow.
And remember, if you are at all nervous about food fermentation or preserving, you can call the Oregon State University Extension Services Food Safety and Preservation Hotline that we talked about at the top of the show. You can read more about food preservation and sign up for that super abundant newsletter I mentioned at opb.org. Also, share your canning and food preservation recipes and tips with us. If you have great ideas on what to do with my peppers, please let me know. Email theevergreen@opb.org. Thank you so much for listening. Also, join us next week to learn about the adventures of the Hen Party, a group of women who took horsepacking trips together in eastern Oregon's Wallowa Mountains almost 100 years ago. Descendants of the group's original leader decided to retrace the Hen Party's steps all these years later. Julie Sabatier and Crystal Lagori produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. The OPB podcast team also includes Mia Estrada and Sage Van Wing. The music in this episode is from Audio Network. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.
Good food is like music you can taste, color you can smell. There is excellence all around you. You need only be aware to stop and savor it.